What do you make of this emphasis on personal responsibility?
It's an essential piece of the puzzle, but it can't be the whole picture. While holding individuals accountable for their words and actions is crucial, we can't lose sight of the larger systemic forces that perpetuate racial inequality. Focusing solely on individual behavior risks ignoring the historical and institutional factors that continue to create barriers for certain groups.
So it's about striking a balance between personal responsibility and acknowledging the systemic nature of racism.
Exactly. And Wave's video, with its focus on personal experiences and spiritual consequences, offers a unique entry point into this complex conversation. It highlights the emotional and moral dimensions of racism, encouraging us to think about the kind of world we want and the role each of us plays in dismantling prejudice and discrimination.
It's definitely sparked some interesting thoughts for me, and I hope it's done the same for you. As you continue to explore this topic, I encourage you to consider some of the questions Wave raises. Do his personal experiences resonate with you? Do you see any limitations or flaws in his arguments? How do his views on anti-white racism challenge or expand your understanding of racial dynamics?
These are important questions to grapple with, and as you seek answers, remember to engage with a variety of perspectives, challenge your own assumptions, and remain open to learning and growing. The journey to understanding and dismantling racism is an ongoing one, and it requires all of us to be actively engaged.
That's a great note to end on. The goal isn't to win arguments or silence dissenting voices, but to foster empathy, understanding, and a shared commitment to creating a more just and equitable world. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the complexities of anti-white racism. We hope this conversation has given you some food for thought and some new tools to navigate these challenging conversations.
Remember, knowledge is power. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep striving for a better future.
It's interesting how he brings in his personal experiences to support this argument. It makes you wonder if his views on racism are shaped by witnessing different types of intergroup conflict in different cultural contexts.
You've hit on a key point. Personal experiences can be incredibly powerful in shaping our perspective, but they can also create blind spots. It's crucial to recognize the limitations of our own individual experiences and be open to understanding the broader historical and societal forces at play.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit, Wave then tackles the legacy of slavery and its impact on present-day society. He makes a really provocative statement, suggesting that only those born before 1865 could legitimately claim to be oppressed due to historical slavery. This immediately raised some red flags for me.
This is where Wave's argument might lose some people. It's a very bold statement that disregards the concept of systemic racism, the idea that societal structures and institutions can perpetuate racial inequality, even in the absence of individual prejudice. It also ignores the very real and ongoing effects of generational trauma, which research shows can have a profound impact on individuals and communities, long after the initial trauma has occurred.
So even though slavery was officially abolished over 150 years ago, its effects are still deeply embedded in our society.
Oh, exactly. Think of it like this. Imagine a tree that's been repeatedly struck by lightning. Even after the storms have passed, the tree is forever changed. It may have scars, weaknesses, and a stunted growth pattern. In a similar way, the trauma of slavery continues to shape the lives of Black people today, influencing things like wealth inequality, access to opportunities, and even health outcomes.
That's a powerful analogy.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about how we often focus on individual acts of racism while ignoring the deeper, more systemic issues that continue to disadvantage certain groups.
To be fair to Wave, he does offer a counter-argument, highlighting the success of Madam C.J. Walker, the first Black female self-made millionaire who was born into slavery.
Yeah, I found that interesting too. He's basically saying, look, if she could overcome those obstacles and achieve success, then anyone can.
Her story is certainly inspiring and demonstrates resilience and the possibility of upward mobility. However, it's crucial to avoid using individual success stories to dismiss the systemic barriers that still exist for many Black people. One extraordinary example doesn't invalidate the lived experiences of countless others who continue to face discrimination and disadvantage because of their race.
It's like saying if one person can escape poverty, then poverty doesn't exist. It just doesn't hold up.
Exactly. It's important to celebrate individual achievements while also acknowledging the larger context. Now, in a related vein, Wave also points out that prejudice exists within racial groups as well, using the example of colorism among Black people. He highlights how lighter-skinned Black individuals are often treated preferentially over those with darker skin tones.
This is something I've definitely seen and heard about, but I haven't fully grasped its impact. Could you shed some light on this for our listener and me?
Absolutely. This is a great example of internalized racism. where members of a marginalized group absorb and perpetuate the prejudices of the dominant culture. It's essentially a form of self-hate, where people internalize the negative stereotypes associated with their own group.
So it's not just about external forces oppressing people of color, but also about these harmful ideas taking root within those communities.
Precisely. And colorism is a prime example of this. It reflects the ways in which white standards of beauty have permeated Black communities, leading to prejudice and discrimination based on skin tone.
To bring all this together, Wave uses a personal anecdote about hating bullies from his childhood to illustrate his main point.
Okay, I'm curious about this. How does he connect bullying to racism?
He argues that standing up against what he perceives as anti-white racism is about fighting injustice, regardless of who the perpetrator is. He's drawing a parallel between bullies picking on the weak and what he sees as a growing trend of anti-white sentiment. Essentially, he's positioning himself as the defender of the underdog, fighting back against a perceived imbalance of power.
This is a really interesting point. He seems to be framing anti-white racism through the lens of his personal experience, relating it to something that felt viscerally wrong to him, bullying. It brings up the question, is this a useful analogy, or does it oversimplify the complexities of racial dynamics? You as a listener might have some thoughts on this.
Right. And this analogy also plays into that familiar reverse racism argument, the idea that the tables have turned and white people are now the ones being discriminated against.
It's important to unpack this carefully. While it's true that anyone can experience prejudice or discrimination, the concept of reverse racism often fails to acknowledge the historical and systemic power dynamics that underpin racism as we know it. Racism in the traditional sense is rooted in centuries of oppression and exploitation, resulting in deeply ingrained inequalities that continue to affect people of color today.
So while it's important to recognize that everyone can be prejudiced, we can't ignore the historical context and power imbalances that shape how different groups experience racism.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the nuances and complexities of these issues. Now, to wrap things up, Wave brings in a spiritual dimension to his argument.
This is where he gets really philosophical. He suggests that racism has karmic repercussions, that negative actions will eventually come back to haunt the perpetrator. It's clear that he believes there's a higher moral or spiritual law at play.
This adds a fascinating layer to the discussion. It raises the question of whether there are consequences for racism, beyond the realm of human law or social justice. It speaks to the moral weight that many people attach to issues of race and prejudice.
Makes you think about the bigger picture, right? Like, are there consequences beyond the immediate tangible ones?
Absolutely. And this is something that might resonate differently with different people, depending on their own spiritual or philosophical belief. For some, this concept of karmic justice might provide a sense of hope or solace, while others might find it irrelevant or even problematic.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity to an already complex topic. We've covered a lot of ground here, from personal experiences to systemic issues, from tangible acts of racism to the subtler forms of prejudice. What do you see as the key takeaways from Wave's argument, and how can they help you navigate these challenging conversations?
I think what's most striking is Wave's willingness to challenge conventional narratives around racism. He's pushing back against the idea that racism is solely a white-on-black phenomenon, and arguing that prejudice can flow in multiple directions. Whether you agree with his conclusions or not, it's important to engage with this perspective and consider the implications.
It's definitely thought-provoking. He's really emphasizing individual accountability, regardless of race or background. It's like he's saying, everyone has the potential to be prejudiced, and everyone should be held responsible for their actions. What do you make of this emphasis on personal responsibility?
It's an essential piece of the puzzle, but it can't be the whole picture. While holding individuals accountable for their words and actions is crucial, we can't lose sight of the larger systemic forces that perpetuate racial inequality. Focusing solely on individual behavior risks ignoring the historical and institutional factors that continue to create barriers for certain groups.
So it's about striking a balance between personal responsibility and acknowledging the systemic nature of racism.
Exactly. And Wave's video, with its focus on personal experiences and spiritual consequences, offers a unique entry point into this complex conversation. It highlights the emotional and moral dimensions of racism, encouraging us to think about the kind of world we want to create and the role each of us plays in dismantling prejudice and...
It's definitely sparked some interesting thoughts for me, and I hope it's done the same for you as the listener. As you continue to explore this topic, I encourage you to consider some of the questions Wave raises. Do his personal experiences resonate with you? Do you see any limitations or flaws in his arguments? How do his views on anti-white racism challenge or expand your understanding of racial dynamics?
These are important questions to grapple with. And as you seek answers, remember to engage with a variety of perspectives, challenge your own assumptions, and remain open to learning and growing. The journey to understanding and dismantling racism is an ongoing one, and it requires all of us to be actively engaged.
That's a great note to end on. The goal isn't to win arguments or silence dissenting voices, but to foster empathy, understanding, and a shared commitment to creating a more just and equitable world. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the complexities of anti-white racism. We hope this conversation is giving you some food for thought and some new tools to navigate these challenging conversations.
Remember, knowledge is power. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep striving for a better future.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into, Black conservatism.
Okay.
And we're going to be looking at this YouTube video called Are Black Conservatives Sellouts? They Hate Us for Telling the Truth. He's by this guy, Aquarius Wave. And he kind of goes right at this really loaded question,
Yeah.
He uses his own personal story to explore why this sellout label, is so powerful.
Well, it's interesting how sellout is used almost like a weapon.
Right.
Particularly when it comes to race and politics. There's this underlying implication of betrayal, as if someone's abandoning their community or their roots.
Absolutely. And Wave really does a good job of showing, just how emotionally intense these accusations are.
Yeah.
He talks about being called a coon and a white supremacist,
Yeah.
which are obviously words that are just designed to hurt.
Right.
And it's really striking that this backlash comes from both white liberals and other Black individuals.
And that's a crucial point. It suggests that the sellout label isn't just about political differences. It speaks to a deeper tension within the Black community itself about what it means to be authentically Black and how to, navigate political spaces.
Yeah, he even tells this story about a simple TikTok video he posted where he implied he hadn't voted for Kamala Harris. The backlash was immediate and intense. People were flooding his Instagram, accusing him of betraying his race.
Wow.
It makes you think about how quickly we jump to conclusions and apply these labels, without really trying to understand where someone's coming from.
It's like social media has become this breeding ground for snap judgments where nuance and complexity are totally lost in this rush to condemn.
Yeah.
Wave's experience with that TikTok video really highlights the dangers of this kind of thinking.
So to understand where Wave is coming from, we need to go back to his roots.
Okay.
He grew up in San Jose, California, right in the heart of the Bay Area, which is often seen as a bastion of progressive thought and, woke ideology.
Now, for those who maybe aren't familiar with that term, woke ideology refers to a heightened awareness of social justice issues.
Right.
But critics often argue that it can lead to a kind of performative activism or an overemphasis on identity politics.
And Wave describes growing up immersed in this culture where technology, social activism, and a very specific set of political beliefs were almost like a religion.
Interesting.
He even noticed that a lot of white guilt was fueling some of the activism, which makes you think about, the motivations behind certain forms of social justice advocacy.
It's interesting how he frames it as like a Bay Area religion.
Right.
That implies that there's a certain dogma, associated with these beliefs, the sense that they're unquestionable and anyone who deviates is a heretic.
And for Wave, this all started to change during the 2016 presidential election.
Okay.
Donald Trump's campaign, with all its divisiveness and controversy, became the catalyst for his political awakening.
It's fascinating how major political figures or events can act as turning points in our personal journeys. It seems that Trump, regardless of one's views on him, played a pivotal role in shaping Wave's evolving political identity.
Wave was initially skeptical of the media coverage surrounding Trump, so he decided to do his own research and dig deeper into the claims and counterclaims being made.
Right.
He describes this as a red pill moment, which is the
Yeah.
term often used to describe a sudden awakening or a realization that challenges one's previous worldview.
So it's like he stumbled down this rabbit hole of information and emerged with a completely different perspective.
Exactly.
This active seeking of knowledge, this willingness to question the prevailing narratives, is really at the heart of his transformation.
He compares the experience to being a vegan for 4 years and then suddenly realizing you've been misled.
Oh, wow.
That feeling of being duped, of having built your beliefs on a shaky foundation, must have been jarring.
Yeah, it's a powerful analogy, and it speaks to the emotional upheaval that can come with challenging deeply held beliefs.
Right.
It's not just about changing your mind, it's about questioning everything you thought you knew about the world.
And this shift didn't happen overnight. He started cautiously exploring conservative content,
Okay.
almost feeling like he had to do it in secret.
Really?
He even describes hiding his laptop screen in the San Jose coffee shop for fear of being judged.
That's a really telling detail. It highlights the social pressure he felt to conform to the dominant ideology in his community. This fear of being ostracized or labeled a sellout can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how many people silence their doubts or stifle their intellectual curiosity because of this kind of social pressure.
It's almost as if questioning the accepted narrative is seen as a betrayal, a threat to the group's unity.